Hello and welcome to another Matura Express English stream. My name is Chris and today we're gonna talk about using the present tense. So, hello again. As I've told you in the introduction of this stream, today it's all about using the present tenses. As you might know, at first we're going to start with an overview of today's stream, which shows us how today's stream is structured. And we're going to first have a look at the overview of the present tenses. Then we're going to compare present simple and present progressive. After that, we're gonna have a look into present perfect and present perfect continuous, which is the same as progressive. And then we have a short look into how to use present tenses for a future action. After that, we try to use the present tenses in the A-level exam. So with further ado, we're gonna discuss the overview of the present tenses. At first, we're gonna talk, or I gonna show you what it's like to write, read, and talk in the present simple. So present simple, very easy, a present moment, a simple action, so a simple aspect. Remember, the aspect is always the differentiation between simple and progressive. So that's your aspect. And then, of course, you have the time in which you're in which you're speaking, in which you're writing, in which you're reading. In this case, it's the present, as I've already said, and a simple action, such as Julia drinks coffee. Yeah, it's better now. Drinks coffee every day. So a repeated action. We use the verb in the simple form. Then we're gonna move on to present progressive. Julia is drinking coffee. The verb here is used in a progressive form, and drinking, of course, indicates the time where when she's drinking coffee. So now she's drinking coffee. So, or if it's it doesn't have to be at the moment. It can also be a shorter time span, because she usually drinks tea, for example. But now she's drinking coffee for, I don't know, 2 weeks. So something that is not conform to someone's habits. So. Then present perfect simple. Again, the aspect simple and progressive is the same, of course. Just have to change the verb. In this case, I've written out those 3 example sentences. I have won 3 trophies in my life. So far, I've won 3 trophies in my life. And since I was a child, I have visited Barcelona 4 times. Or have you ever been to Barcelona or another city? Of course. So present progressive is a bit different, of course. In this case, the example we're gonna first have a look at the example. I have been practicing drums the whole day. My wrist hurts pretty badly, it should be. So what you already can see, but we're gonna have a look at it. Just have to correct here. Of course, it hurts badly. It has an effect on something, in this case the wrist. And we're gonna, with the present perfect progressive and also of course present progressive, we are focusing on the action. So, and no, not so on. In this case, practicing drums and the result of the action. Or have you been smoking in here? I can smell the smoke. So there is an action going on and there's a result. Whereas with the present perfect simple, we only, in this case, we only look at the amount of times someone has won trophies, or how much cars he or she owned, or in this case, how many times someone has visited a place or a town or city. As I've already said, simple or progressive always refers to the aspect. So, for example, go, going, write, writing, and so on. You know how to form it, I guess, by now. You should know it, actually. If you have any questions, of course, you can write us via the chat in this video, or for this video basically. And we're gonna come back to it as soon as possible. So let's move on to the present simple. As I've already said, it is used to describe things which are generally true. Today, it's a day sorry, of course, it's not with. It's which are generally true. Facts, permanent situations, regular or repeated actions. Also used to give directions. So, for example, let's use things that are generally true. Water boils at 100 degrees. A fact: the library opens at 8 in the morning, or permanent, or it could also be a regular or repeated action, of course. Which is the next example. I usually go to school. I go out on weekends. In this case, it's used with so-called adverbs of frequency. So usually, I usually do something. Or a fact: Germans drink a lot of beer while the French drink more wine. And last but not least, we have
comment. It's lol. When fan we use is going to use befasse, that's also not clear. When can we use is going to use, that's not clear. Maybe is going to use.
When can we use is going to. So just to make it clear,
maybe that's the question.
lol, do you want to know when we can or should use going to? Maybe?
Probably.
So if you can answer it, the question, then we can go into it, of course.
Oh, sorry for my automatic correction. When can we use is going to use. Okay. So when can we use is going to use. So probably he means like the going to future.
Yeah. Basically, we're not discussing going to today, but normally you can use, of course, there are some rules where you can use is going to. So I'm going to go to the festival tomorrow. That's when you use basically you have a some sort planned action, so it's already fixed. Or a better way, which I always like to use for an explanation, is evidence. If you have evidence, for example, the clouds are black, it's going to rain soon, for example. So you have present evidence, in this case, the black clouds, and then you can use is going to. Or another example, Sandra, you can really see her stomach, or no, not your stomach, her her belly has grown bigger, so she probably is going to give birth soon or something like this. So you have a present evidence, or you have something that you're really sure of, but of course there are other ways too to express it, which we're gonna have a look at today, especially because you use it to form future intentions. Always, you can also use future intentions for not with the present progressive, of course. But we're gonna have a look at it in a few slides, actually. I hope that's clear somehow. If you have any questions, of course, ask us.
And we also had a stream on using the future tenses. Maybe he can
Yeah,
have a look at
we also have a stream which was actually done last week. Last Wednesday, about the future tenses, where Maria perfectly outlined the rules actually about the future tenses just like this stream today, just about the future tenses. And of course, there are rules. Sometimes there are no rules, unfortunately, but we teach you the rules. And if you use these rules, you're good to go for your A-level exam. So if everything is clear, I'm just continue now. Of course, if you have questions, you can ask as many as you want. So another thing to use with the simple, in this case, present simple, is also when you want to say, there comes the bus. So you wouldn't say, here the bus is coming, or something similar. Just use the simple tense. That's just a phrase you can easily remember, and if you learn it once, you will never forget it. So present progressive or present continuous, or sometimes called the ing form, is used to describe temporary actions in progress. Sometimes it's at the round or at the time of speaking. Sometimes it's just something different than a habit or repeated action. Yeah, and it's very likely that the action will continue after speaking. Sometimes, or often, it is used to describe annoyance. He's always watching television. So in this case, you'd have to emphasis on always. Of course, if you're doing a speaking exam, it's always good to, he's always watching television. So you hear the emphasis on always, which is the adverb, of course. In this case, you're using the verb watching with the ing form progressive continuous. You use it to describe pictures. So the man, you actually can't see a picture right now, but the man standing at the front, or the woman sitting at the back, or used to describe it. Pictures, easy way to remember. Or of course, a very common way to do progressive and simple exercises for pupils is to use background actions, which are always, if they're normally the longer actions, are used with progressive. And I also have some examples, of course, for this present progressive. The students are currently studying, the writings of Marx. So it's just a current situation. They're not doing it every day, every year. So it's just something that is happening at the this month, maybe something new. So yeah, normally they're discussing other things. Steven is not here at the moment. He's working. So at the moment, I'm sitting in this chair and I'm not at home. So very easy. In this case, it's the background action. So he's working a longer time span, and maybe at some point of time, of course, he has been asked where Steven is. So he or she replied, he is not here at the moment. He is working.
We have another comment.
Yes.
It's like that's like the continuous form, isn't it?
The going to? No, actually not. Of course, you can use the continuous form, the present progressive, as a future form, but it is a bit stronger than going to. But of course, it's not really that easy to differentiate going to and the progressive present progressive. But present progressive is something that is even more fixed than the going to, I'd say. Present progressive, of course, if you decided already, let's use the going to, if you already decided to use, to do something. Like the festival, you decided to go to a festival. So you can either say, I'm going to the festival tomorrow. You've decided. But you can also say, what was my example? Festival. Going to a festival. I'm going to go to a festival, but you can also say you're going to a festival tomorrow. If you have bought, for example, if there's evidence, or not evidence, I'm sorry, if you've bought tickets, for example, that's a very super fixed thing, you could say. So very obvious that you already have decided on it, and you might go with friends, and it's a really fixed situation. You use the progressive, but of course, I'm gonna outline it in, I think, in a few slides. So I can show you some examples, but of course it's really hard to differentiate. But basically the things you have to be, or the differentiation you have to really make is between will and going to. But of course, progressive is a bit more fixed than the going to. It's not that easy to differentiate, unfortunately. And although there are rules in speaking and using English, going to, and the present progressive are sometimes used interchangeably. So that makes it hard, but the things you have to differentiate, or you have to be able to differentiate, is will and going to. But as I've already said, you can also watch the future tenses stream again. And if you have questions about them, of course, you can also ask again if you want. But now everything. Yeah, if it's clear, just give a thumbs up or just ask whatever you want. I'm gonna continue with the present progressive now. So Stephen is not here at the moment. Oh, we already had it. I'm sorry. The world's population is increasing. So at the moment, the population is increasing. The world's population hasn't increased, or in the past, I put it another way. In the past, the world's population did not increase at some point of time, or at any different point of times. But today it's increasing, continuous process. Some day it might stop increasing, never know. The sun is shining. Let's go outside. So the sun is shining right now, and you want to go outside. Really easy, I guess. She's feeding the snake while we're on holiday. Yes, that's a special, not a special case. Actually, if you already listened to my examples, you'd know that this is, although feeding the snake can be a repeated action, but in this case, you have to have a look at the second part of the sentence, while we're on holiday. So they're not on holiday for 16 years, I guess. They're just on holiday maybe for 2 weeks. And in this case, she, neighbor for example, or someone else, is feeding the cat. Just as a action that is not a repeated, actually not a repeated action, since she's doing it just for this X amount of time. Okay, so it happens in a certain time frame. I've prepared some sentences here that best showcase simple versus present progressive. And actually, if we had some viewers, we could do it together. But now I just doing it by myself. The Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam houses, or is housing, the biggest collection of Van Gogh's art. Maria, what would you say? Houses, that's correct. We are trying out a new type of sports at the moment. That's an indicator word. So Maria has chosen the right tense or aspect in this case, and the right tense, of course. We are trying. He is taking the bus every morning. That's a repeated action, Maria. What would you say?
I'd say takes.
Oh my God, she's right.
Ding, 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 ding.
He takes the bus every morning. Temperatures around the world are increasing or increase.
Are increasing.
Yes, are increasing. Same example I've already did in the
Oh,
other slide before.
he wrote a comment. Next is takes. So now he can do the next one, the last one. No, the other one.
Takes. We already have it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have. We just.
Yeah. You were right.
Yes. That's totally right. If you want to do the other two, we're just gonna wait. Normally she listens or is listening to Abba, but today she.
Can you solve the or he or she says listens is listening.
Yes. That's totally right. And you'd get a golden star if you were present here. Super. So the next one, if you want to do the next one,
Close.
Yes.
Great.
Super. So we already have an expert here, a tenses aspect here, expert of course. And thank you for your contribution. That's really enjoyable when we can interact with you out there in the chat and do the examples together. Of course, present perfect. We all need to do the present perfect, of course. The tense, the most hated tense in the universe, I guess, in the English universe. But it's actually quite easy. You use it to talk about situations that started in the past and are still continuing in the present. I wrote to this, so I'm gonna shortly correct it. And often the action is completed, but it actually main thing is that you have that something started in the past and continues until now or even after speaking. And then with the present, you gonna just adjust what you want to focus on. Either you want to focus on the result of something or on the action. So that's the aspect then. But we're with the present perfect right now, so simple. There's a connection to now, of course. For example, action in the past has a result on now, also used. Or you have focus on the result of something. We have already talked about this. So how much, how many, or how many times. That's also important for the present perfect. So let's continue with some examples. Have you ever been to Greece? So since you were born until now, have you ever been to Greece? There's a question mark missing. Have you ever been to Greece? So it's about how much, how many times, focuses on your life. So depending how old you are, have you been to Greece? I'm sorry, not Iceland. I've never been to Iceland. So in my whole life, since the day I was born, I've never been to Iceland. It hasn't rained this week. It is not finished, of course, in this case. I've told you that sometimes the action is completed, but not every day. every time. In this case, it's just about that it hasn't rained. It hasn't rained so far. So far, it hasn't rained this week, but it might rain this week. Never know. Maybe it's just Wednesday, so there are a few days to go. Or I've never played tennis in my life. So my whole life, I've never played tennis. Okay, present perfect continues. Used to describe actions that have recently stopped, or actions that began in the past and are still happening. Of course, that's quite similar to the perfect, of course, to the simple present perfect. But we have no focus on whether something is finished or not. And the most important thing here is we're gonna focus on something on how long and not many times, how many times, or how much. So let's just talk about those examples. It has been raining, the ground is wet. So there is a result, a present result, or something just recently stopped. Of course, the ground can be wet for hours if it has rained, but it has recently stopped even if it's after an hour. Or it has been raining for 2 hours. So it's still raining. It's the focus on that it has been raining. So the action of raining, it's not the same as you'd say it hasn't rained or it has rained this week. Since this sentence, it has rained this week, focuses if it has rained 1 or 2 or 3 times. It just focuses about if it even has rained this week. Whereas the second sentence here, it has been raining for 2 hours, focuses on the action, about the actual raining action. In this case, it is still raining. That's just the example. I've been feeling very well recently. So there is another thing that you focus or emphasis on feeling very well. And it also indicates that the person might not have felt well in the past. And we hope, of course, that the person continues to feel well. Now, how to use present tenses for a future action. We have the progressive, as I've already talked about, but we all, as I've already said, but we also have the simple, but we're gonna start with the progressive. This is things that have already been decided and arranged. So the meeting is taking place on January 1st, 2020 at 9 p.m. Or I'm having dinner with my girlfriend on Friday. You have already set a date. You have already set a time where you want to meet. You've already decided upon where you want to go, so in which restaurant or diner or something. That's something that is planned out. We're seeing a play at the theater next week, which means there are some people involved, of course. You have already bought the tickets, you have already made reservations, and it's super fixed and planned, so use the progressive. Of course, we can also use the simple timetables or fixed future events. My plane leaves at 12, or the repairs are due to start on 24th November. I hope you get the different aspects and tenses, or how to use the tenses. If not, of course, try to contact us, try to inform yourself with grammar books and easy explanations, as we do, of course. And then you will, and practice, of course. Try to do a lot of reading, which is, I think, more helpful than just doing the traditional grammar exercises. But, of course, you also have to do them somehow, just to get used to how to use the different forms, but not use them, actually. Yeah. Okay, and the last slide now is all about using present tenses in the A-level exam. Of course, you have to use them in your exam. You have to use a certain amount of tenses. Actually, every tense in the exam. You need every tense. Of course, and therefore we are trying to help you out here. For the introduction, for example, you use the present perfect continuous in this case. I've been learning English for 2 years now. 2 years is a time span, and you're focusing on the learning process for 2 years now, and of course it will continue. Or I've worked for 2 big companies so far. You've worked for 2 big companies, so the action here the emphasis is on how much you've done something, or how many times, or yeah. Since I was a 12 years old, 12-year-old, I'm sorry. Since I was a 12-year-old, I've always wanted to become a teacher, which is not true in my case. I study every day for 2 hours.
That's of course true.
That's not true, because I study every day for 6 hours right now, at the moment, since since I'm having my final exam in May, which is super fixed because I already registered it. And right now, I'm not studying, actually, because I'm doing the English stream for present tenses. It's my favorite topic, actually. And I'm currently working at the library.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
No, I'm sitting in the library, actually, and study like a workhorse. Yeah, that's basically the things you can use for the introduction. Of course, the tenses. Of course, there's also the future, which I forgot here. But since we're discussing using the present tenses, we're focusing on present tenses. For the monologue, you can also use, of course, if you want to describe a pie chart, a graph, or something like this. Sales have increased by 2% since 1987. So, present perfect simple. Or sales have been decreasing lately. So it's going on, the decreasing is going on. And it's of course focusing on the action. Environmental pollutions has become a problem over the years, unfortunately. And tourism in Tyrol is still increasing nowadays. Yeah, actually that was the last slide. If you have questions, still have questions, ask us. And we're gonna come back to them as soon as possible. But for today, I'm done with the present tenses. And I hope that you better understood, or partly better understood now, how to use the present tenses. Yeah, in this case, have a nice evening. And big thanks to Lol for his contribution. And we're gonna see each other on Wednesday. Actually, Maria.
Demonstration exam.
Yeah, demonstration exam. So we'll also be there. And yeah, have a nice evening and good night.